but it was insignificant in outward appearance. But Elisha understood the significance of the act. He didn't go, "Oh man, what are you doing?" No, he understood what Elijah was saying. As Elijah was saying, "You will take my mantle. My cloak will be upon you. The power of God, like a mantle on me, will be upon you. You have been chosen by God to follow me." Because even though he's busy with the things at hand, he's listening for the Lord. He's not there plowing and going, "Man, when's God going to call me? I know I'm supposed to be doing something other than plowing. And I'm willing to plow, but it's been years, Lord, that I'm plowing this stupid field over and over. Every year I'm out here. I'm waiting for you, Lord." All right? He wouldn't have heard the Lord. Because you see, it was the Lord who called Elisha. Elijah didn't say anything. He didn't say, "Here I am putting this mantle upon you because you are the called of God to replace me." No, he just went by and threw it on him. And kept going because, Elisha then had to run after him to say, "Hey, wait, I want to go kiss mom and dad goodbye." So Elijah just put it on him and kept on trucking. When he finally caught up to him, he said, "Let me go kiss my mom and dad goodbye." Elijah says, "What have I done to you? Go ahead. I haven't called you. I'm not recruiting you. I'm not doing this. I'm just doing what God told me to do." It was God who was calling Elisha. And if his heart had been hard during that doing what he could put his hand to, he wouldn't have heard. He wouldn't have understood. He would have gone, "Man, it's hot out here. I'm sweating, and you give me this hairy cloak? I don't need it. Take it." But instead, he was listening and waiting for the Lord in the midst of doing that which he put his hand to, which was right before him. Number 3, the Lord's call into service is not, capital N-O-T, bold, exclamation point, underlined, italics, is not in conflict with godly family relationships. The call of God into service is not in conflict with godly family relationships. For our part as believers, our relationship to our family is always to be godly for everything that we can do. Now, some of you I know have family members that are ungodly. They look at your faith and they go, "You're an idiot." Man, God's really helped you out a lot. But we are called to be godly on our side of things. What am I saying here? What I'm saying is that God's calling into service for you doesn't mean you can neglect your family. Doesn't mean you can neglect your godly responsible to be godly unto your family first. When I was in Bible college, I was working at the headquarters of the Assemblies of God. And I saw there, and I've seen it in Calvary Chapel, and I've seen it other places where ministers of the gospel have taken the calling of God as an excuse to neglect their family. "Oh, I'm called of God. I don't have time to, do all that talking stuff with my wife. No, I don't have time for the kids because I'm called of God to this or that." That's wrong. I submit that that is totally wrong. Now, there are sacrifices in time that I make and have made over the years with my family and my wife in order to be doing the things that God has called me to do and called Krista and I to do together. But we did not neglect our family. We did not neglect our children. We did not neglect each other, but made sure that that was in place first. And there's a New Testament precedent for that and command for that. In the instructions for an elder, it says, has to be someone whose kids are in submission, that aren't unruly kids. I know in this day and age there are kids that are active, and there are physiological and psychological reasons sometimes for kids getting, kind of wild and out of control. And that's not what I'm talking about. But many, 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 many times, unruly children are the result of neglect by mom and dad, by letting television or the neighbors be the parent. Now, you can be the best parent in the world and still be dealing with those issues. So please, please understand my heart here. But there are so many who deal with unruly children because of their neglect for their children. The Lord's call into service is not in conflict with our responsibility for godly family relationships. Two more. The Lord's call into service is sure. It's sure. If you are saying, I think maybe God called me into this service, but man, I'm not really sure. Well, then God didn't call you. Then God didn't call you. If you're not sure, God didn't call you. Now, we read before that we're to make our calling and election sure by being diligent in our faith and seeking God so that we give Him the opportunity to make that sure in us. But if you are unsure about God's calling on your life, then you're probably not called. How do I know that from this story? Well, look at what Elisha did. He said, I've been called of God. That's it. I'm not keeping a back door in case this thing with Elijah doesn't work out and I can come back and plow. He slaughtered the ox. I wonder if he slaughtered all 12 or 24 of them. If so, that was one big feast, right? Man, that was a barbecue that I would like to have been invited to. And then he took the plow machinery, cut it up, and used that to cook the meat. He was burning his bridge. He was saying, I know I am called of God, and boom, I'm going. Now, does that mean if you're called of God into ministry that, boy, okay, quit your job and go to it? Only if God says so. I still work a full-time job. Why? Because God hasn't told me to quit my job yet. I'm praying that He does one day. But if He doesn't, that's... Hope nobody from my boss isn't listening to this. It isn't because of my job is so terrible. My job is a blessing. But I would love to be able to give those hours to the ministry here. But when God calls, you know it. You know it. Jesus said, my sheep, they know my voice. They know. And when God speaks to you in your heart of hearts, you know. You know that voice. There are other times where we're going, man, I'm not sure what to do in this situation. Lord, show me, am I hearing you in this or that? And that's all understandable. But for the calling into service, you know. You know. You know.